The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. The first character that I want to talk about is the nun, her physical appearance and clothing. The nun had a simple, modest smile. She sang her prayers and hymns with a fine tone through her nose. Her nose was elegant, and her eyes were gray like glass. Her mouth was very small, soft and red. Her forehead was fine and wide, almost 9 inches. She wasn't small by any means. Her cloak was charming and graceful. She wore a trinket on her arm and a set of beads, the longer one colored green. From these hung a bright, shining golden brooch, which was carved an A with a crown on it, and below, love conquers all things. Her behavior, she spoke the most charming French, the kind that they teach in a nunnery in Stratford, England, not the kind spoken in Paris. When eating, she had marvelous manners. She never let a crumb fall from her lips, nor dropped her fingers too far into the sauce. 3. Personality and attitude. She had a special zest for fine conduct, and she would wipe her upper lips so clean that you couldn't find a trace of grease on her cup after she drank from it. She was very pleasant, entertaining, and tried very hard to imitate the ways of the royal court. She was very kind and charitable. Quotes from 148 to 149. She used to weep if she but saw a mouse caught in a trap, if it were dead or bleeding. Lines 150 to 152. And she had little dogs that she would be feeding with roasted flesh, or milk, or fine white bread. And bitterly she wept where one were dead. Now, in comparison to the nun, would be my grandmother. When she was a young gal, maybe she was in her 20s, she was a teenager. She was sent to the United States with her sister to study also in a nunnery, but in Northern California, in somewhere around Palo Alto. And there she learned etiquette, manners. She also learned spoken French. And when I came down to El Salvador to live with her in the 70s, she taught us manners at the table, how to hold a fork and knife, how not to speak when we were eating. She actually taught us all kinds of manners and etiquette. So she was very similar to the nun, the wife of Bath. 1. Physical appearance and clothing. The wife of Bath's physical appearance was that she had a wide gap between her teeth. Her head and neck were covered, and she wore a wide hat as broad as a shield. Her flowing cloak covered her large hips, and she wore sharp spurs on her heels. Behavior. She did not like to have anyone stand between her and when approaching the church's altar. If not, she could be quite cruel to the other parishioners. 3. Personality and attitude. On the other hand, she liked to laugh and chat with people and knew how to remedy broken hearts. 4. Quotes 455. A worthy woman from besides Bath City was with us, somewhat deaf, which was what was a pity. Line 470. She had 5 husbands, all at the church's door. Now, what's similar to this, I knew somebody who was a relative. I can't mention who, but it was a fellow, not a woman. And he also had been married several times. And he also was a womanizer, but he went to church every Sunday and he was very religious and always talked about Christ. And sometimes I said, well, how can you be hypocritical? If you're not obeying the Ten Commandments, and you're going to church and everything else and trying to influence your religious ideas on others, well, you're womanizing at the same time. And he was very, his character, even though he was a woman, it was very similar to the wife of Bath. The pardoner, physical appearance and clothing. The pardoner had his hair as yellow as wax, hanging down like a hank of fiber. In a small stream of his looks behind his head, he wore no hood upon his head. He sewed a holy relic upon his cap. 2. Behavior. He sang merrily and loud and preached in such a sweetly manner in order to win silver from the crowd. 3. Personality and attitude. He was a flatterer and spoke in an evasive way in order to pardon his parishioners for the exchange of money. 4. Quotes from line 719 to 720. He had a cross of metal set with stones in a glass and a rubble of pig bones. 728 to 729. The church that he was a noble ecclesiast. How well he read a lesson or told a story. Now, an example of this would be that I know a particular, what do you call it, a preacher here in Salvador. I can't mention his name, but he passed, and his son has taken over the church. And I went to one of his uh, sermons or church services. I guess that's what you would say. And there were also a lot of very poor people there, giving to their donation to the basket. And one time I saw him in the Panaderia San Martin with a huge gathering of, I don't know who were the other. I guess they were the church administrators, and they were eating so well, you know. And he drove some kind of a Mercedes Benz, and I said, well, how can you be a hypocrite? How can you take money from the poor, and then use it on yourself? And I would say this fellow is a very he relates to this particular character, somebody that taken advantage and being a sort of a hypocrite. So anyway, thank you very much and have a very, very good morning.